Spread the word of Islam. Oh, fortunate one, paradise must be won. Paradise must be won each day and each night, through darkness and through light. Cry it out to the world. Spread the word. Spread the word, oh man. Spread the word of Islam.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Riyad Ansari. In this episode, we'll be looking at comparison between Buddhism and Islam. And comparative religion is a topic that is of increasing importance in the world in which we live, because the world is getting smaller and smaller. And people need to understand what their neighbors think and believe. One of the shocking little things that I found out recently about people in Sri Lanka, one of my colleagues at the Islamic University of Malaysia, he's doing a study on perception that Buddhists in Sri Lanka have of Muslims and Islam. So he asked one retired high school principal, who was a Buddhist, what is the Muslim name for God? And that man said, Muhammad. So if he didn't understand something so simple in Islam, that means he doesn't know anything about it. Likewise, what does your average Muslim know about Buddhism? Probably virtually nothing. So this is something that we need to acquaint ourselves with what our neighbors believe in. And in the spirit of the verse in Surah Al-Ma'idah, وَلَوْ شَاءَ اللَّهُ لَجَعَلَكُمْ أُمَّةً وَاحِدَةً وَلَكِنْ لِيَبْلُوَكُمْ فِي مَا آتَاكُمْ فَاسْتَبِقُوا الْخَيْرَاتِ إِلَى اللَّهِ مَرْجِعُكُمْ جَمِيعًا فَيُنَبِّئُكُمْ بِمَا كُنْتُمْ فِيهِ تَخْتَلِفُونَ. If Allah willed, He could have made you one religious community, all of humanity, just one. But He didn't will that. Instead, He wishes, or He intends to try you by what He has given you. So He gave some people this, and He gave some people that. And so what is to be done? فَاسْتَبِقُوا الْخَيْرَاتِ. So race for the good. Try to do good. إِلَى اللَّهِ مَرْجِعَكُمْ. To Allah will be your return. And then He will inform you what you used to disagree about. So we may think that we have the truth, and they may think they have the truth. In the end, we'll be informed after we die who is right about this and who is wrong. But while we're living in this world, we should try to know about each other and appreciate those things that we can agree about and that we find good in each other. And we agree to disagree about what we disagree about. So in the history of Islamic civilization, Muslims came into contact with Buddhists around the beginning of the 2nd century after the Hijrah. As the Muslim empire expanded, and two places that the Muslims conquered were Sind and Central Asia, Samarkand and parts of Afghanistan. And so there were lots of Buddhists in Sind, and places like Samarkand were almost entirely Buddhist. So the Muslim scholars in those days, they used to have discussions with the Buddhist scholars. And there's a story also told about Muqatil ibn Hayyan, who was a Muslim scholar in Samarkand. At the time that the Abbasids were beginning to try to overthrow the Umayyad dynasty in Syria, this man, Muqatil ibn Hayyan, he became caught up in the civil war that had broken out in Khorasan. So the general of the Abbasids, he was killing Arabs left and right. So Muqatil ibn Hayyan, he fled for his life. and he went to Kabul. Now, the Muslim armies had at one point attacked Kabul and taken the city, but they weren't able to hold it. So that area, the mountainous areas of Afghanistan, they never really were incorporated into the Muslim empire. And so when this scholar went there, the people were overwhelmingly still Buddhist. And the report mentions that he became one of the major reasons for people in that area to enter into Islam. So actually what we see in those areas then is that a place like Afghanistan, which was overwhelmingly Buddhist, then it became 100% Muslim. And it wasn't because the Muslims were ruling them. No, they were outside of the area of the Muslim government. And so Islam spread there simply by a matter of preaching. Then the Muslim scholars, they wrote books like Shahrastani and other people. They wrote books about other religions, but their information about Buddhism was not very accurate or detailed. They didn't really know very much about it. And about 200 years later, one of the great scholars of comparative religion in history, his name is Biruni, he wrote one of the most important studies of Indian culture written by Muslims. And in that book he mentioned that he had never met a Buddhist and he had not read any of their books. And since he was from Samarkand, that indicates that there were no Buddhists in Samarkand by that time. Everybody had accepted Islam. When we look at what is it that Buddhists believe and what is it that Muslims believe, is there an overlap? Are there disagreements? What do Muslims say about Buddha? Was he a prophet? Who was he? These are some of the questions that I'd like to deal with. The dominant position among Muslim scholars is that we don't pass any judgment about the Buddha. Was he a prophet or not? Because some of the teachings that are attributed to him, they're incompatible with Islam. Most principally, the idea of reincarnation. And because of that, if that was really his teaching, then it's very, very difficult to say that that he would have been a prophet from God. But the thing about Buddha is that they say that he lived around the 6th century BC, and there's a wide variance even between Buddhists about when exactly he lived. There's a span of difference of about 150 years between the estimates of when he was alive. So when he lived, it seems that writing was being used at that time in India for things like keeping track of business, accounting, stuff like that. But his writings weren't written down. And it was only a couple of hundred years later that they were written down. So how were they transmitted in between? It was an oral tradition. And so how accurately were his teachings transmitted? That's up to, we can't really say. So we don't pass judgment one way or another about his prophethood. As mentioned, I came across a reference that one scholar, he tried to interpret the verse in Surah At-Teen, وَالتِّينِ وَالزَّيْتُونِ وَطُورِ سِينِينَ وَهَذَا الْبَلَدِ الْأَمِينَ. At-Teen refers to the fig. And many scholars, they interpret the fig and the olive and the different, the Mount Tur and land of peace, meaning Mecca. Each of these are a symbol associated with a prophet. So Muhammad Hamidullah, who's from India, from Hyderabad, he said that the fig is a reference to Buddha because the kind of tree that he sat under when he got enlightenment is from that same family as the fig tree. That's pretty flimsy evidence, though, to establish that he was a prophet. The most key part of his message was the idea that life is unsatisfactory. It's frequently mentioned in the terms, life is suffering. Why is it suffering? Because it's impermanent. In this life, you might be healthy for a while, you're going to get sick. You may be rich, or you may get poor. You're alive, but you're definitely going to die. So nothing stays the same. And those whom you love, you're going to be separated from them. And what makes the suffering the key to reality is the idea of reincarnation. Because you're going to die, and then your longing for life is going to bring you back. And you will die again and die again. So death is a very painful experience, and you're going to be locked into this cycle of dying and dying and dying. So because of that, he believed that the essence of life is suffering. Inshallah, we will pick up again after a short break. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Spread the word.